All right, welcome everyone. Today is the 15th of January, 2025, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider Office Hours meeting. We are a sub-project of Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which basically can be summarized as please treat each other as you would expect to be treated, or in other words, please be kind to each other. And if you'd like to talk, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Okay, so looks like we have a few issues on the agenda today. Before we get into that, I'll quickly take a poll here. Do any of our sub-project maintainers have updates that they would like to share with the group today?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing any hands going up or anything, so we will move on. Okay, so I have a couple kind of administrative things to cover, and then we can get into some of the issues that Nolan and Joel are bringing up here. So just a heads up, I converted the agenda doc to a pageless setup just to make it a little bit easier to navigate since we're getting into a new year here. What this means is that like all the headings now appear as different index tables. So we have some extra ones for these other things, but it should make it easier for people to find older meetings if they need to go back into previous years. Does anybody have questions or objections about that or anything? Okay. And then the other thing is, I just wanted to call out, although Google Docs is acting very strange for me right now, that our maintainer track is now listed on the agenda. So if anyone is curious about that, you can go see, and with luck, we will have the whole band together here. So it could be very exciting. Stay tuned. All right. Any questions or comments about either of those topics? Okay, let us move on then to some business here. So we got a topic from Nolan and Joel about the GCP issue. Please, Nolan and or Joel.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead. We were updating to the latest version of the cloud provider and noticed when we create private clusters that do not have direct internet access, that the nodes were not getting added to load balancers. And the PR 679 basically says to not add the nodes if they are not on the default network. And it figures that out by using the pod cider field or the label that was mentioned there. Neither of those are set by our setup. We use OVN for our CNI, CNI, and that doesn't set pod cider. And we're not sure what sets this GKE label. So looking for some feedback on that. Yeah, go ahead, Walter.
I couldn't tell if Joel had his hand up. I don't have direct feedback. What I can say is I've got a note, and I actually better positioned than I have been in a while to follow up on these. So I can follow up on this if you like. I don't have an immediate answer for you. Networking is not exactly my forte, but I can follow up.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, we also tried pulling in the PR in tried pulling in 778 to see if that would fix our issues, because it looks like it changed around some of the logic that was added, but it doesn't appear to have fixed things for us. So
is this sorry, I know you kind of went over this, but I just wanted to be very clear.
Yeah.
Is this GKE or is this a OSS install of Kubernetes?
It is not GKE. It's using GCP nodes as the control plane nodes.
Okay. Do you know which CCM you're using?
Yes, it's the external CCM.
The one from Cloud Provider GCP?
Yes.
And are you using the custom Node IPAM controller that comes with it? Do you know?
That I don't know.
We aren't.
We aren't. Okay.
Okay. So I do know there is a custom IPAM controller. I'm not saying that that's the issue, but Google does have its own IPAM controller for a reason. I'm not
Okay.
sure if this is the reason, but
Okay. Yeah, and
Well, I did a little bit of looking into this a couple of days ago, and yeah, it looked to me like this custom IPAM controller. I haven't seen anywhere that says it's an absolute requirement for running while you're running an OSS GCP cluster. And we've never needed it in the past, so we haven't run it. But it looks like this effort, whatever it is, it's something around multi-subnets, has made an assumption that if you're running the GCP thing, GCP CCM, then you're going to have this IPAM controller running. And so you have to wait for the IPAM controller to add these labels and the pod cider. But as far as I can tell, that's not true. And it's also, I was looking at like how that's working. I think it's relying on assumptions about CNI as well. And so if it's relying on assumptions about a particular CNI being there, that also wouldn't work for a generic OSS GCP. So
fair enough. Yeah, I'll see who's the current networking. I mean, I know it looks like Bowie commented on that, and he at least used to be the. And I'll check with the Node team because they may also have run across this. So, yeah. I'm sorry, I don't have an immediate answer, but I will follow up.
okay,
think that's
great.
helpful.
Thank you.
A question. I know that we do run into Bowie at SIG Network. Would it make sense to bring this discussion there, or what do we think?
Couldn't hurt. Honestly, it couldn't hurt. I mean, he's clearly already somewhat familiar with it, given that he, I saw that he'd already commented, or it looked like he'd commented on 679 already, but like 7 months ago.
Okay, yeah, I can try popping on those and getting some feedback.
Okay, does that, I guess Joel and Nolan, does that help a little bit in terms of like next steps and whatnot? All right, cool. So Nolan, you also have the next topic about could use some reviews. So please take it away.
Yeah, so this PR is actually kind of old. This was upgrading the cube dependencies to 131. Mikey, you had asked me yesterday or a couple days ago to rebase this, and Joel brought up a next question about bumping directly to 132. So I don't know if any GCP maintainers are here to weigh in one way or the other, whether we want to keep this PR and bump to 131 or just skip and go straight to 132.
So I just re-inherited more control over this, and so I hope to actually have someone working on this actively very soon. But I want to have a chat with them, and unfortunately, they live in LA, so they're kind of distracted right now.
Sure.
I have opinions about this. I think, given the tags that we have in this, I think it would be really nice if we could land that PR with the 131, tag it, and then get another one for 32. Just on the odd chance that someone really wants to get a 1.31 compatible version. I can't say that anyone's out there looking for it, but I would love to be able to say, yes, here's at least one tag where we stopped at 31 and then, put the other one in, even though like I tend to kind of agree with Joel, like it's probably easier just to bump it to 32 at this point. But if you're willing to go the extra distance, Nolan, I think it'd be cool to get this in. Then we could tag it and get 32 out, and then get a tag in place for 32.
Yeah, I'd love to get this working, tagged and branched, and then go ahead and get 32 going.
Okay, sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, cool. And I guess like this dovetails into an issue that we're trying to make more present, which is that we would like to get more cross-pollination of maintainers and whatnot, coming from the SIG into these various components. So like I certainly don't feel comfortable like approving this, but I think, as we get closer and closer to doing this kind of maintenance work, like I'll try to put a little more eyes here and see if I could help out, at least with the first layer of reviews and whatnot. Okay. Any other like questions or comments about that? Okay. Bridget, you've got the next one with our annual report due in February already. So please take it away.
Yeah, so I was actually just looking to see if I could find the external evidence on GitHub of that. It looks like they haven't actually sent anything yet, but it did come up in the SIG Chairs and Tech Leads meeting yesterday. So just highlighting that there will be a lightweight, not as extensive as in the past annual report, but one thing that would be valuable to start thinking about is, what did you like give a talk or a blog post or land something cool in Kubernetes, or maybe help backport some really important patches? What stuff do you think that you participated in for the SIG in the last year that you would like to highlight? Because it's always nice, especially the stuff that doesn't always get as much recognition, like identified and did troubleshooting on an important bug and actually got some patches backported. It's an example of the kind of thing that doesn't seem glamorous, but it improves the quality of life of Kubernetes users worldwide. So we should highlight it. So please start thinking about, I will bring that up on Slack and in this meeting in the coming sessions, but just bringing that to your attention now that we'll be thinking about what to highlight from last year.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful idea. And yeah, for anybody here or listening to the recording later, it would be, yeah, like reach out to us. We'd be happy to celebrate your work. And Walter, you've got your hand up, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, weirdly, I'm gonna prop for people who aren't actually technically part of our SIG, but I would say we got huge help, I think, in kind of pushing things across the line with getting like cloud provider extraction done from both Antonio Ojea and Ben the Elder. So I would like to suggest that we give them props. I mean, because we hit a big milestone, and part of it was from their help.
It's a great call out. Thank you, Walter.
Okay. And I'm learning the danger of putting my unmute button too close to the landing area of my operating system. It keeps doing something weird. Anyways. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Walter. I think you're right. Like Antonio and Ben did help us immensely. I think, and honorable mention to Dims as well, who put in some nice debug and triage work. Okay, so that's it for our regular agenda, unless folks have ad hoc topics they would like to add. There's a large commiseration thread going on in chat right now for all of us who got rejection letters yesterday. So I guess a virtual group hug, right? Okay, so just to kind of close things out here, let's take a look at our needs triage issues to see if anything new has come up. It looks like, yes, something new has come up. And let's see, is this something that we could help with? Long-lived TCP connections fail when downscaling the kube proxy. Okay, I guess this could be related to some sort of load balancer type thingy, right?
Is there anything in the cloud provider details?
Azure. So, I mean, I'm guessing that they ran into this, because they mentioned some external cloud providers such as Azure. I'm guessing that whatever the problem they're hitting, they must have hit it on Azure. The question is this a Azure specific problem, or is this something related to the way that, like, I would expect if we're getting into the load balancer behavior, that might be specific to each cloud that does this, or do we have an issue in the cloud provider in some sort of common cloud provider code? But since this would be dealing with the load balancer on each, platform.
Yeah. The part where it says some such as makes me wonder, did they test other ones or
That's a good question.
like it's interesting language, because it sort of implies that they may have verified it anywhere else. And that it would be just nice to help isolate.
At the same time, as far as I know, we have no actual cloud provider code in Cube Proxy, if they actually mean the Cube Proxy.
Right. What I'm guessing somehow is like, does the kube proxy interact with like the external load balancer to the cluster? Like, does it get attached to one side of the load balancer for a cluster? I thought the kube proxy was just operating within the network space of the cluster itself.
Yeah, I hate to punt this to SIG Network, but I don't know if this is something that we can solve in Cloud Provider.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure this should work the way they want it to.
Okay, was there another question or comment we should add on here as well? I guess, Chris, you said you're not even sure. You're
No,
not sure.
yeah, I'd rather let SIG Network comment on that. So that's
Okay.
good.
I guess I don't want to remove SIG Cloud Provider just yet unless we have consensus here to do that, but maybe.
No, don't remove it. It's unclear whether this
Right.
is relevant to anything Cloud Provider officially controls,
Yeah.
but we can help guide them.
Yeah, no, for sure. So we'll leave it in a needs triage state.
Yeah.
Just add these questions for now.
Awesome.
Okay, and I believe that was the only issue. There was one from
The only
December.
untriaged one.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think that
cool.
was the only.
And I know I joined a minute or two late because too many meetings. But did we get a chance to hear from or say hi to anyone who I'm seeing names that I'm not 100% sure have been on the call much in the past? So did we get anybody who hasn't had a chance to say anything about themselves? Like we heard about Nolan's thoughts, but like I'm like, Nolan, you're new? Say hi.
Yeah, that's
sure.
that's true. Like, I guess I overshot this because I work with several of the new people, but
Yeah,
yeah. If anyone would like to say hi to the group who hasn't been here before, please, yeah.
Yeah. Nolan and then Theo, and then yeah, say hi, please. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Nolan. As Elmika mentioned, I work on his team with Joel at Red Hat. Been doing Kubernetes stuff since 2017, but most recently working on the cloud infrastructure team at Red Hat.
Hey, I'm Theo. I also work with Nolan and Joel and Elmiko. Been doing Kubernetes stuff since 2019, maybe slightly before. I can't do dates at the moment. A while. Yeah, nice to meet everyone.
Would anyone else like to say hi who maybe hasn't had a chance to say hi?
Yeah, hi. I joined Hetzner in October and now just recently started getting into the Kubernetes topic in more detail, and I'm taking care of the Hetzner Cloud Control Manager and the CSI driver.
Excellent. Great to see so many new faces here. And thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
Good, good call out, Bridget.
Awesome. Well, Elmiko, I guess I just have one other question, which is, do you want to give people the elevator pitch for your ideas about improving logs and making sure that we've covered some gaps, and just kind of give people the inspiration to take away from this meeting for what could be on the horizon for this SIG this year?
Yeah, I guess so. Although I see Walter has his hand up. So before I get on my soapbox, Walter, please.
Oh, I wanted to ask Luca. Luca, is that right?
Your audio has gotten.
You got really crackly.
Sorry, let me try that again. I wanted to ask Luca, assuming I'm not butchering poor Luca's name, if he wanted to kind of give us a little bit of a heads up on Hetzner, their use of CCM, and if there's anything they would either like to do to help or things we could do to help them.
I think right now we're kind of good. I just joined in October, so I don't know that much about the upcoming stuff. We're currently doing a lot of refactoring, especially with respect to our documentation, which is lacking a bit. So that's, I think, mainly upcoming for us, as far as I know.
I think if I'm picking up on what Walter's kind of laying out here, which I like, I think the general notion here is if Lucas, if you is it Lucas or Lukash?
Yeah, Lucas.
Lucas. Okay. So yeah, I think the wider issue here is for anyone, Hetzner or anyone else who might be coming to SIG Cloud Provider, if you find that there are gaps in your experience or things that perhaps the community could do, please raise them at one of these meetings or bring it up in our Slack channel. We always love to hear about ways that the SIG can do more to help people who would like to participate. So if you do run into any problems or any gaps or areas we think we could have more information available, please bring it up. We would love to hear those kind of issues.
Yeah, thank you. I will do so.
Okay, and good point, Walter. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so I was going to look at the periodics quickly, but I also want to make sure we have time in case anybody else has other questions. So before I get to that, does anybody else have other kind of open questions that they would like to bring before we move on?
Testing is the main thing on my mind. So
Okay, so I guess to respond to what Bridget had kind of prompted me at before, one of the things that I would really like to see happen, and I think we've been talking about this as a SIG for a little while now, and we're starting to move closer to it, and we're giving talks about it, is, currently we have some cloud provider-based tests in our end-to-end suite in the Kubernetes repository. Those tests really run on a subset of infrastructures. I think the most thorough testing is done on GCP currently. And there is testing, I think, also done on AWS and Azure as well, but it's kind of scopes in. So one of the things we've been talking about is, can we make a generic set of tests that we could improve in the main Kubernetes repo and then give individual cloud providers the ability to exercise those tests so that they could have confidence that their cloud controller managers are behaving in the way that the core Kubernetes community expects. And in many ways, this looks very similar to the way that the container storage interface testing has been implemented in the Kubernetes repo. So if you look at the storage tests, they've created a way to configure the storage interface that can be contained in each specific CSI driver repository, but can be exercised from the main repository. So you can kind of create a test by combining a CSI repo, like if you had a CSI Azure repo and you wanted to run those tests against the core, you could then compile it against the core Kubernetes repository and have a testing suite that would tell you, okay, I'm running with Azure CSI driver. I've run the storage conformance tests. Now, the cloud provider tests, the cloud controller manager tests are a little more coupled than the storage tests are. So we do need to create kind of an interface that allows individual providers to do things like delete a node so that we can test the node lifecycle controller, or confirm the presence of a load balancer when we're testing load balancer services, or those kind of things. So this is a project that is, it's taken us a while to kind of get to where we are. And I think where we are is giving talks and socializing the idea and working towards an enhancement. So there's a couple of engineers at Red Hat who are also taking a look at this, kind of trying to figure out what tests we need to enumerate, and then also putting together some proofs of concept about like how we could do this type of interaction. So I'm optimistic that this year we'll make more progress on the enhancement, and hopefully we'll even get to the point where people could start running these tests on their own. But it all kind of depends on how we as a community decide to prioritize this, and if we think it's important enough to really push forward. So I hope that satisfied your request for an elevator pitch. That's kind of what I'm thinking, and where I'd like to see us go, actually, if I got my way. And I guess, does anybody have questions about any of that?
Not necessarily a question, but just kind of statement that it would be great if everybody kind of sits with that, thinks about where they want to plug in. And then as the next couple of months roll out, we break this down into more actionable steps and figure out which parts people want to use to make some impact and help them get to their goals as well. I see this as kind of a win for everyone. So thank you, Almiko.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so just to kind of give an update on that, like from our side, one of the things that, one of the engineers I'm working with at Red Hat is doing is going through all the tests right now in the networking folder to try and enumerate which tests we might want to have in the cloud provider or in the cloud controller manager section. So we're trying to do some of that early initial work, and I think probably the enhancement that we're working towards will really spell out a lot of the details here and everything. At least that's the hope, I guess. Okay. Oh, and then, one other thing, which is kind of like this, if you continue riding the elevator with me, I would keep talking about this. Something that I think would be really cool too is kind of the next layer of this, which would be once we had really good tests in place, we might be in a different position to talk about like how do we get more infrastructure providers to participate in the upstream community testing? How can we create better relationships with the CNCF and those infrastructure providers? So I would love to see a world where like there's a lot of automated testing happening in the Kubernetes community. It's happening on multiple platforms, and there is an easy runway for people to understand how to add a new platform if they're in a position to do that kind of thing. Because I think this is just going to make the community stronger, and it's going to make the code stronger and everything too. So, all right, we've ridden the elevator all the way up and all the way back down to the ground floor.
Great. All right, Walter.
Okay, so yeah,
So I have a question for you, Almiko. When we're talking about this sort of testing, I mean, one of the things that we own is the CCMs, right? Like whether it's for, GCP, Azure, or or actually, I don't know where Hetzner's repo is, but let's assume for now in my argument that Hetzner. When changes come in to KK itself, it would be really nice to be able to find a way to be able to say, I want to bring up a cluster in Azure, in GCP, in Hetzner, as it should be with the latest KK code, the head of KK plus, I'll start with there are various compatibility modes, but let's say the head of the CCM code. And in fact, it's probably more than the head of CCM. It's like the head of CCM, the head of CSI, the head of CRI, the head of the auth provider code, all of the things that are cloud provider specific with KK, and then run those tests, which certainly suggests that it would be good if we had some way to put all of those pieces together and then bring up a cluster with that mix. I mean, is that the sort of thing you're thinking about?
That is
Does that
something
even make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yes, it makes sense to me. And it is something that I'm thinking about. Part of, for me, part of the issue is, I think right now in the testing community, like my understanding is there's a lot of focus on COPS as the methodology for like deploying new clusters and everything. But there is also some discussion about the possibility of using cluster API to do these kind of things. And so like, I think like one, I'm still trying to understand some of the discussion that's going on between those two things because I think that will help me understand kind of the foundational technology for how we're creating these clusters. But then the second part would be, okay, yeah, at any given time, how do we say, build me the head of all these things and then feed it into whatever the engine for making the cluster is, take all the output from that and feed it into this, creational engine. Yeah, like I would love to see that happen. That was something that we used to do a lot of testing on it back in the OpenStack days. There was an entire project based around doing these kind of things. And I know some of that work is done in Kubernetes as well. So yeah, like for me, that's a little bit more of the learning. I still need to understand some of the infrastructure technology there. But yeah, like yes, I think we absolutely need to get to a place where you can say, test me the head of master or head of main, for everything, right? And it goes out and pulls all those things. And doing it from a cloud provider perspective, like one of the ways that we're talking about doing this testing is that you would have to build the test out of the cloud provider directory. So there's a little bit of an inversion of how you build the binary. But that could also be the way that we start to address this other issue, which is each cloud provider then could create linkages to tell us, okay, I'm the cloud provider, but I would also like, this CSI driver. I would also like this other operator. I would also like this other thing. And so I think there's a way that we could start to build that linkage. But I need to learn a little more before I could actually speculate on the details. I guess, does that answer the question?
It does. And I mean, I think there's a couple of call outs there. I mean, I wasn't going to get into the details, but I think like as the one cloud provider's bad enough to still be using Cube up, I think trying to normalize on an actual functional system for bringing up the cluster, and I happen to like COPS, but Cube API would be fine. Makes a lot of sense to me. I think that gets us in a much better place. And when we start having to wire through, like we want to get the KK images, or we want to get the CAS and the KCM images from the KK directory, and we want to get the CCM images from the KK repo, and we want to get the CCM images from this repo, and we want to get the CSI images from that repo. I think the degree to which we're all using a common tool is going to make our lives a lot better. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And me personally, like, yeah, I agree. I would love to see that in a tool with the differences expressed through like configuration files and whatnot, so that we can make the tool as kind of modular as we can and give the test implementers and the code implementers the freedom to say, okay, I've got this open-ended configuration format. These are the things I need, and this is how I put it together. So hopefully we can work towards that. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Just a comment that big plus one on the open configuration and easy for people to surface exactly what's changed, because that's always the problem.
Right,
So.
yeah, totally. And you know, and then in the other direction, it's like, okay, we can't boil the ocean. So we have to take kind of like, bite-sized approaches at this. But yeah, like I think it's a big idea, but the more we keep hammering on it and kind of polishing it down, I think the more palatable it's becoming. So yeah, but we'll keep working towards it, Okay. So
Awesome.
let's take a look at the periodic board just to see if there's anything that looks
Yes.
absolutely terrible. That we might need to investigate. And it's looking good at the moment, which is very nice to see. I'll scroll over. Okay, we had a couple of failures. What were those on? Aggregators should be able to support 1.17 sample API server. And then there's a cloud provider, GCP E to E, but it looks like that might have just been a flake because it went back to working after that. Okay, that looks like a similar failure though. Okay, I'm not overly concerned about this one failure. If anybody else is, please raise your hand or raise an issue. Okay, well, if there are no other comments or questions or call outs, I think we can call this meeting to a close and get about 20 minutes of our day back here. So going in 3, 2, 1. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. See
Thanks,
you next
folks.
time.